Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Now we would like to present about housing issues that involves public sector. We are going to discuss about issues and its solutions, as well as to provide recommendations to the state issues. And lastly, what would the impact of COVID-19 in relation to the housing issues? So the first issue would be flood causes house destruction. So you know that flooding is one of the phenomena that are classified as natural disasters caused by extreme weather conditions and heavy rain. It is actually a natural result of cyclical monsoons during the local tropical wet season in Malaysia from October to March. Besides, deforestation can be one of the causes of floods. Areas that always been affected as annual flood events are in east coast of Peninsular Malaysia, which are Kelantan, Pahang and Terengganu. The major impact of the disaster could increase in the number of damages and losses to property and even loss of life. The main damage from flooding comes from the impact of rapid moving waters to their home. Flooding pushes the sides, weakening the house structure and at times separating it from the foundation. Some people lose the entire house or just parts of the house. The worst part is that they could not afford to buy another house or to even repair the affected houses. Recent flood events, which in 2020 until in the beginning of 2021, in Kelantan, Terengganu, Pahang, caused an approximate total of 1,500 and 1,300 and 3,000 families respectively, which is believed to be equivalent to the number of affected houses. So what would be the solutions that is being given by the government? So there are a few incentives given by the governments or public sectors in Malaysia for houses that has been affected by flood. So the first one would be a budget for around 200 million ringgit Malaysia has allocated by Finance Ministry to all state governments that have been affected by the flood events that cause infrastructure damages. The funds would actually be allocated to repair public infrastructure and facilities, road repairs, social amenity programs, repair of public housing, and maintenance of business premises. The important part is that they allocated the fund in the repair of public housing. So the funds would be channeled through the Ministry of Housing and Local Government as well as agencies under the Ministry of Rural Development. Besides, it will only be allocated after the house has been analysed accordingly and properly, which is in accordance to the amount of premises and the value of the damage. Other than that, specifically in Terengganu, Majlis Agama Islam dan Adat Melayu, which is MIDAM, provides allocation to repair damaged houses for flood victims. So the funds and the allocation is provided to those whose houses has been affected by flood and in need of financial assistance to repair those houses to be renovated or restored. Thus, the priorities will be given for the Asnaf group.
The second issue of housing in Malaysia would be property overhang. Property overhang defined by residential units that remain unsold in the country. In the first box above, we can see in the slide, we can see a newspaper headline dated on 2020 stated that over 20 billion residential properties remain unsold, and in another newspaper headline stated that the unsold houses kept on increasing over the years. So, this is very concerning because the property kept on being built but nobody does not have any interest in acquiring them. So, what causes this phenomenon? The main reason would be the unreasonable price of these residential properties. According to iProperty.com, most residential properties are too expensive to be purchased by most locals since the price normally 4.8 times the average of Malaysians' annual household income. According to CompareHero.com, average monthly income of a household under B40 is around 1,000 to 4,000 ringgit. So, If we multiply that to 12, which means that a fellow B40 only receives around 12,000 to 48,000 annually. And this creates a huge gap between the household income and residential property price, right? So, this caused most Malaysians to not be able to afford to buy these houses and choose to rent or lease instead. However, most residential properties that undergo property overhang, not necessarily those which cost over 500,000 and above. In fact, the most remaining unsold houses are in the range of below 300,000. Hence, despite the fact that Malaysians' annual household income is quite low, the rapid development of these residential houses is also another problem. House developers tend to build these houses at a very fast rate with the expectation that a lot of people would buy them. Because of this creates a property overhang by the cause of excessive supply of houses exceeds the market limit of absorptivity. Okay, the meaning of market absorptivity is defined by the rate of residential properties being sold over time. Okay, now we move on. Okay, so here's a solution that is performed by the government, which is called House Ownership Campaign, or being called HOC. HOC is a government initiative designed to support home buyers looking to purchase property and to combat the unsold residential properties problem. Okay, the campaign was launched in January 2019 and announced by the Housing and Local Government Minister or Kementerian Perumahan dan Kerajaan Tempatan, Datuk Zuraida Kamarudin. HOC functions by collaborating with major developers and providing privilege to potential buyers at an affordable price. The benefits that HOC offer are the buyers could gain a minimum 10% discount off their house prices and also a full exemption of stamp duty. For those of you who might not aware of what stamp duty is a fee for legal documents involved in order to buy a house. So the results from this campaign are nothing but positive. Everything's positive. So, like has been stated in the newspaper headline above, over 34,000 units were sold and which were around 23.2 billion ringgit under HOC in 2019. And over 25.6 billion worth of houses were sold under HOC in 2020. This clearly shows that HOC excels in its execution of aiding Malaysians to afford to buy residential houses. However, the problems cannot be resolved if the source of the problem is not being handled, right? So, despite HOC's amazing success, house developers kept on building houses till it oversupplied the housing stocks in Malaysia. In my opinion, the source of the problem needs to be resolved first. Thank you. Moving on to the third issue.
Malaysians are categorized into three different income groups, which are top 20, middle 40 and bottom 40. B40 group is considered as the most vulnerable income group in Malaysia. Thus, lots of attention has been given by the authorities for this group in order to help them out from the problems. It is undeniable that the government has taken initiative in helping the B40 group related to housing issues such as Perumahan Rakyat 1 Malaysia, Prima and Rumah Selangorku. However, we still could see that there are still many people among the B40 group who are still having problems with owning their own house. This is not only because of the inflated housing prices in Malaysia, but also because most of the affordable houses in Malaysia have been monopolized by the T20 group. Under this issue, we would like to highlight regarding the monopolization done by the T20 group towards the B40 group in purchasing and owning houses. Although some of the B40 group receive a high amount of income, they would still be considered as B40 because they stay in an area which is located in a location that required higher living costs compared to other areas such as small towns. This issue also can be related to how lots of houses remain unoccupied. This is because most houses purchased by T20 with the intention of buying that house to get rent revenue as their investment, they put a higher rent price and open it for anyone, especially B40, to rent that house. According to Osman 2020, People prefer to rent a house rather than buying their own house. This is due to the expensive house prices. Therefore, T20 groups who have extra knowledge and extra capital in handling property, they take this opportunity to purchase houses from the developer and target B40 groups as their tenants. Thus, they make house rental services. The price given, however, seems not really affordable for B40 to rent it out. Thus, some houses remain empty. The monopolization by T20 can be linked with real estate investment. Under real estate investment, they will buy houses with cheaper prices and then target to sell it to foreign people who are interested in buying Malaysia property. From that, they will receive capital gain while the B40 group left with few choices for them to buy houses. Did take action regarding the unaffordable houses prices issue among B40. In Malay Mail dated 11 April, it is reported that Datuk Zuraida Kamaruddin, the Housing and Local Government Minister, said that under the Housing Development, Control and Licensing Act 1996 Act 118, there will be amendment to help house buyers of abandoned housing projects. However, it seems like the government still does nothing regarding the monopolization by T20 groups. It is suggested that government should be more aware regarding these activities done by T20 group as it already considered as discrimination towards B40 and M40 groups. Government should take proactive action in setting rules and guidelines pertaining to this matter. In Islam, we should always act justly towards all people. Each one of us deserves to live in a sufficiency and peaceful life. Thus, governments who act as the ruler should do their role correctly with integrity and honesty for the sake of the ummah.
Moving on to the recommendations. There are 3 recommendations that suggested here. First, restructure disaster plan and integrate technocentric approach in Dafe. The plan should be reviewed and improved from time to time, aim to reduce the exposure of people to flood hazards and reduce people's vulnerability to it, such as involve and rebuild committees in disaster management and educate them on how to prevent the next one. In this way, the government can control the budget allocation annually because this budget has increased dramatically from time to time. And at the same time, the government can solve this issue of the inability for the flood victims to afford in repairing their house destruction due to monsoon season. Okay, integrate technocentric approach. Technocentric approach is the ability of technology to protect nature. Allocate more budget on the development of it and balance the technocentric approach with ecocentric approach in order to obtain sustainability. As much as we can see, commercial properties suffered much greater damage in monetary terms. The household suffered the most in terms of damage in kind, which is intangible losses. The party which is responsible to it is the National Disaster Relief and Preparedness Committee, which is NDRPC. Second recommendation here is strengthen the planning system, its policy and land use control. This is an important role in controlling and managing the physical development to achieve sustainable and efficient development. Before granting any planning approval or planning permission for housing development application, local planning authority should ensure that it conforms to the provision of the local plan. And after obtain the permission, go through the land approval process, especially for conversion and subdivision of land by the state authority. This has been enacted in Town and Country Planning Act 1976, Act 172, and Malaysia National Land Code 1965, Act 56. The market force should operate to achieve an equilibrium by interplay between demand and supply in the housing market, where price become a determinant factor and considering the fact of household income, their ability to pay, their preference in terms of prices and location, and their choice in terms of tenure, types, form, and method of housing to be developed. This will solve the issues of unsold, overhang, and oversupply of housing, and also balance the housing supply with actual demand. Last recommendation here is revise affordable housing scheme policy. The public sector concentrates mainly on low-cost housing programs, while the private sector, which is housing developers, concentrate on medium and high-cost housing programs. This policy is to ensure that the government must prepare and supply the affordable homes unit with a good quality and sufficient according to its capacity and requirements. In Makasih Syariah, protection of life can be related in this issue. How? The inadequacy of affordable housing for B40 groups will lead an increase to the homeless people. This issue has contradicted with the Makasih Syariah protection of life. Hence, it is important for the government to cater this issue accordingly. Besides, the government may provide an integrated database that is accessible to all relevant stakeholders to ensure that the supply is adequately meets the demand of housing according to the locality, price and targeted groups, which subsequently improve the planning and development of affordable housing. When the pandemic COVID-19 comes in 2020, in budget 2021, the government continued its commitment to deliver more affordable housing. Since the new supply is entering an already soft and overhang market, planning backed by thorough analysis and market study is needed. This is to avoid aggravating oversupply of houses. How does the government help Malaysians toward home ownership amid the coronavirus pandemic? First, reintroduced under the short-term economic recovery plan by the federal government in June 2020. Next, the Malaysian government recently announced a new benefit for first-time home buyers. If you select first home below 500,000 ringgit, you are eligible for a full stamp duty exemption for memorandum of transfer documents (MOT) and loan agreements for purchase agreements starting from 1st January 2021 to 31st December 2025. As you heard before from other presenters, that the government has already running the home ownership campaign (HOC) until May 21, which provides a similar stamp duty exemption, but it's limited to new launch properties. That's all from us. Thank you.